Good day, dear listeners. I am Isai, and together with me are Trina and CJ. And welcome to the second episode of BIGAS Battling Insufficiency Through Guided Agricultural Sustainability, a podcast series. And for today's episode, we will be unraveling Philippine historical accounts on sustainable practices to farming.
How do you make a farm more sustainable? There's no single answer, but there are common practices used by farmers across the country to improve profitability, quality of life, and environmental stewardship. In this episode, let's hear what it means to be sustainable for farmers using traditional farming practices as we look back to our roots.
The native Filipinos uses traditional farming methods to support sustainable practices that respect the land and preserve a part of a local culture and resilient people's traditional knowledge. Let's meet the Ivatans.
The Ivatan people are native to Batanes, the northernmost province of the Philippines. Their way of life is adapted to the unique conditions of the islands. Batanes, lying in the typhoon belt, is exposed to the fury of many typhoons that pass through the Philippines, and the Ivatans have had to build sturdy stone houses to protect them from the winds and torrential rains that batter the islands. The Ivatans also adhere to the agricultural practices that can withstand and even make the most of the often unforgiving elements. Aren't they amazing?
Strong winds and rains can ravage the land and instantly destroy the year's harvest. So the Ivatans have adopted some farming practices to manage their risks. Some of them are: first is the crop rotation. There are approximately 5,500 hectares worth of land, which means farmers have plenty of room for crop rotation. This practice has been employed by agricultural communities all over the world for thousands of years and involves growing different types of produce on the same land during different seasons. And these are the benefits of this traditional farming method. First is pest control. Next is preservation of soil quality. Next is the prevention of soil erosion. And lastly is the minimal use of fertilizer.
Traditional practice is the following. Each farmer has about 300 to 700 square meters of land divided into 3 to 5 parcels, strategically located on different sides of the mountain. Only 1 to 2 parcels of land are planted in every season. The rest are used for following, which means the land is plowed and tilled but left unseeded, giving it time to rest and restore nutrients, or for grazing cattle. This system enables the maintenance of soil health. Next is the water harvesting. Lying in the typhoon belt, Batanes experiences light to heavy rainfall. The Ivatans make the most of this by having rain collectors instead of constructing expensive irrigation systems. Spring water and deep wells are their other sources of water.
Up next is the delineation of areas. The characteristic stone houses of the Ivatans are separated from farming areas, effectively preventing the unintended contamination of crops from the household chemicals. The Ivatans also avoid going from one parcel of land to another to prevent the transfer of insects and pathogens to neighboring areas. And lastly, planting of typhoon-resistant crops. Because typhoons can ruin any good harvest above ground, the Ivatans focus on planting root crops such as sweet potato, garlic, shallots, and onions. However, in the other native Filipino groups, these traditional farming practices were associated with rituals as practice for interacting with and influencing the supernatural beings are interwoven with activities of planting rice and other staple crops. The ritual practices for sustainable farming are evident with the Malitbog, a small peasant community in central Philippines. This native Filipino group believed that plowing the field and planting the crops are not enough to ensure an agricultural success. There are other factors which are equally important. The surrounding world, for instance, is believed to be inhabited by a host of spirits who can cause good luck or bring misfortunes, depending upon how man maintains his relationship with them. Thus, these spirits should be dealt with very carefully by the farmers and should be given similar, if not more detailed attention than the field itself. And that brings us to the end of this episode. This is Isai.
This is Trina.
And this is CJ. We hope that you have learned something about sustainable farming practices. Thank you for listening and see you on the next episodes.